James Grande.
What is going on, everybody? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome to the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Show. It is Monday. We got 13 games here kicking off the week. James Grande was on your NBA DFS Playbook today. That's already been out. It was a big slate, a lot of news, a lot of high totals. James, my friend, how are we feeling about things today?
Feeling pretty good. 13 games. Still have some news to break. So obviously stay hip to that. But pretty good slate overall, ready to jump into it.
What's your biggest takeaway so far doing the research today?
Play multiple lineups so you can play all the spend ups because they're all in good spots.
All the spend ups in great spots. We've been talking about some high game totals already this morning. Some of them have increased since then this morning. Pacers Pistons Pistons up to 247 now. Wizards Sixers up to 244. Denver Atlanta up to 242. I think definitely the most 240 game totals we've had on a single slate this year.
Yeah, I mean, that largely has to do with the size of the slate, but yeah, there's some good matchups. There's also, when you look at things, a lot of spreads that are not too encouraging. You have like 5 or 6 spreads that are double digits, and
right.
So yes, there are a lot of big totals, and some of those games do have tight spreads, but they're also 5 games with double digit spreads that could derail your lineups if those games do blow out. Again, I'm not saying they will, I'm not predicting that, but there is like a lot of interesting stuff going on in Vegas today.
Let's go to the point guard position because the cover of your playbook today was Fred VanVleet. What is it about FEV that you're looking at today?
I like this matchup. Obviously, when you take a look at San Antonio's defense, they are the 4th worst defense. They are also the 4th fastest team in terms of pace. And Houston's 29th. And you look at, that's not even the biggest pace bump we have on today's slate because we have Denver and Atlanta. But we've kind of talked about FEV where like the shot attempts haven't been there for him lately. And then in Denver, 17 shots, 13 free throws. The 2 games prior, 14 and 15 shot attempts. He plays all the minutes you could want out of players in your lineup. And he has a 50 burger against San Antonio. Over on FanDuel, he's really cheap. He's under 8K. So I really, really like him over there. But this is just a fantastic environment if the shots fall and the assists kind of come back to where they were. I mean, we finally get the scoring, we finally get the shots, and then suddenly 3 assists, 4 rebounds. Like this is a guy who has been doing both for a large portion of the year. So looking at Houston, I think their pricing isn't the most favorable on the board. Şengün's very expensive. Jalen Green's probably a little too expensive. Jabari Smith, 6,200 is a good price, but we never know when the minutes are going to be 25 or 35. What we do know about VanVleet is he's right in the smack dab in the middle in terms of price. He has a fantastic matchup, and he never comes off the floor.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, right? The minutes have been key for him. 40 or more in 3 of the last 4 games here. Great spot again against San Antonio. When we are looking at the top tier, though, we have Luka Doncic, Tyrese Halliburton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Trae Young. How are you breaking down the top price guards in the slate?
It's tough because Luka, obviously, no Kyrie. 3 of the last 4 games, he's gone for 70 plus, included 90 in there. So obviously, if you get to Luka, by all means, get to Luka. No one's going to stop you. Halliburton, coming off, I think, a disappointing loss in his mind against the Lakers in the in-season tournament championship. Wasn't great. He also got blitzed a lot in that game with double teams, and he only took 14 shots, and that was kind of unlike him, where 3 turnovers as well, where he was back-to-back games where he didn't turn the ball over. So I really like the matchup for Halliburton. Bottom 10 team is Detroit. They've lost in defense, they've lost obviously 19 straight games, which is pretty bad. So Halliburton is definitely in play. And then I found something interesting about SGA. with Lou Dort off the floor, we already know Lou Dort is ruled out.
Right.
2 fantasy points per minute. And this is not like a couple minute sample. Like Lou Dort has played essentially every game this year, and he's obviously been in and out of the lineup throughout the entire campaign. So like you look at SGA, who's one of the front runners for MVP. He's one of the best two-way players in the NBA, and you're like, holy smokes, this guy is averaging 2 fantasy points per minute without Lou Dort on the floor.
Playing 35 plus minutes a night.
35 plus minutes. The only issue you run into is they're at home against a Utah team who also downgraded John Collins to questionable in the middle of the day today.
Yeah.
Already without Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler, and Walker Kessler re-entered the starting lineup. So potentially 3 of their 4 best players going into OKC.
12.5 point spread.
12.5 point spread. Like that's not great. But again, 174 minute sample, 2.04 fantasy points per minute, 38% usage rate for SGA without Lou Dort. So like, take your
and SGA is not a guy. If you just kind of look at some of these recent games where there've been blowouts, he doesn't get the run. 28 minutes against San Antonio when they won by 40, 29 minutes when they won by over 20 against Golden State. He played, was it 23 minutes against Portland when they won by 40. So, they definitely need a competitive game here because, this isn't Thibodeau. This isn't Nick Nurse, keeping their starters out there. Ime Udoka, keeping their starters out there for 40 minutes a night. SGA will get the rest if they go out by 25 going into the fourth.
Yeah, and we had problems with Dagnall a lot last year, head coach of the Thunder, like playing deep rotations, not giving guys like major run. And SGA does in competitive games. He is the most reliable when it comes to minutes.
Right.
But it is one of those situations where, like, if John Collins is ruled out, it's just going to be a really uphill battle for Utah. Again, if you want to get to SGA because the NBA and like Utah, we've seen Utah shoot like 70% from 3 on random nights, right? So if you want to get to SGA, by all means, the top 3 at point guard are elite. I haven't found myself getting to Trae Young. Not to say you can't. I just preferred spending up to the 3 guys above him. I also think like Atlanta's definitely not the team in this spot getting the pace up spot. They are absolutely the reverse end of the spectrum. They're 3rd in pace. Denver's 26th. So they're losing out on a lot of offensive possessions.
Still has a 242 total end of the game.
Sure, and I'm not I'm not saying you can't get to Trae Young because we've seen, like you said it on the podcast last night, everyone in this tier has 70.
Yeah.
In their bag. And I'm not saying Trae doesn't. I just haven't found myself getting to him when I think the other 3 are just in better spots. Like based on,
I guess
not the total.
For me, it's weighing out the competitiveness of games, right? The 3 guards above him are all in 10 plus spread games. Trae's in a game that's a 2-point spread at home.
Memphis is a 1.5. Memphis is 1.5.
Oh, is it 1.5 now? Okay, I thought it was higher than that. But okay, then in that fact, Luka obviously in a good spot there. The 2 guards above, though, they're in the larger blowout.
Halliburton's only at 7. Halliburton's at 7 too.
Okay,
those are 2 numbers that like are
you're fine playing the 7.5. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, 7. I mean, Detroit sucks. Obviously, like, could they get blown out? Sure. Being home doesn't like necessarily matter for them, but
sure,
they are slightly better with Killian Hayes and Bojan Bogdanovic than they were previously.
Right. That's 100% agree. Mid-tier guys, where were you moving off of after FEV?
I mean, you could play De'Aaron Fox in tournaments if you'd like. Lillard, you could play. He's super consistent if you want to play him in cash. Maxey's obviously has a ceiling and in a really good spot against Washington. It looks like Embiid's going to play. I mean, he went through shoot around. He had a full practice yesterday. Still listed questionable, but there's no reason to think he's not going to play after logging both those things. So Maxey still going to be, the second option there, but is a pivot off of Embiid, who is getting some ownership. You mentioned you opened up with Van Vliet. I love Van Vliet here. Cade is fine in the spot. It's just Detroit is a mess. And Cade is a mess at times. What if if Cade is in one of those like aggressive defensive moods that he was like earlier in the year, we're gonna get foul trouble going up against Halliburton. That wouldn't be great. That's like the extent of the mid tier that I really like. I don't. I mean, point guard. I was a position that I have largely prioritized spending up today. I didn't really like any of the value. I think there's value at other positions that we're going to get to. Obviously, there's no like, even when you look at ownership, like everything is just spread out everywhere. Like the next name I'd get to, and it's someone I wrote up, is Killian Hayes at 5,500. That's like, I know a big drop off, and I'm sure there's guys in between them. But 5,500 for a guy who has re-entered the starting lineup and averaged 31 fantasy points across 30 minutes and is shooting the ball well, and on the year is now shooting the ball well, 44% from the field. Like this is not something we've been accustomed to seeing from Killian Hayes. But it's a tremendous spot, and we've talked about it a bunch and that's why I've kind of come around on Cade a little bit, where like matchups like Indiana, you give opposing players like kind of a boost. Like Killian Hayes is a 0.87 fantasy point per minute player in the 3 games Bojan Bogdanovic has played with him. Who's to say, or shared the floor with him, who's to say that's not at 0.97 or 1? And if Killian Hayes plays 32, 33 minutes tonight, 33 fantasy points at 5,500 is very solid production.
If Kyle Lowry gets ruled out, where do those minutes go? Obviously, Josh Richardson plays point, but like what's their next man up? Does any value come into play? I mean, they have RJ Hampton here rejoining the team. I mean, they don't have Drew Smith, obviously. They got Jamal Cain, maybe, or any of these guys can play any minutes, or are we going to get 38 minutes out of, Richardson, Jaquez, Martin, Robinson? Like, they're just going to go 6-man rotation on us, or what does Miami do here?
I mean, it's Spoelstra. He's been very strange with rotations in years past. He could definitely give RJ Hampton run. My main intrigue would definitely be Josh Richardson, though. 5K, starting point guard in a pretty decent pace-up spot. I know Charlotte's played a lot slower since LaMelo Ball has exited the lineup, but Richardson has been playing all the minutes, and we saw a couple games he started late November. He played 37 minutes in back-to-back games. So you have to assume large portion of the minutes. And let's say those 37, let's just, for argument's sake, he plays 37 at point guard. That's only 11 other minutes for the point guard position in general, right? So like, would that matter if RJ Hampton played that run at that point? No. So Richardson would be the primary target for me.
If Lowry's out, do you play Richardson or do you play Hayes?
Probably Richardson.
Okay.
It's a really good spot for both. Like, obviously, I think it's even a better spot. Yeah, I'll go Richardson. Multi-position eligible, $500 cheaper.
Yeah.
Helps
you when you're trying to find money to spend on this slate, right?
Yeah, and like probably the minute ceiling is probably higher. Like Killian Hayes is there's 9 guards in Detroit we've seen play like 30 minutes this year.
Right. And there's you never know with them that he could all of a sudden play 20 and they go to somebody else. Kobe White, Albert's asking about, obviously great matchup for guards who are going up against Milwaukee. Price has been rising on him, but he's been meeting the challenge. How are you feeling about your Bulls here tonight?
I still feel like they should sell everybody. Sell them all. It's fine if that's where you land. I mean, he has been good. 22% usage without Zach LaVine this year, which feels like it should be a little higher, but DeRozan and Vucevic both.
I wonder what the recent sample size looks like. Like maybe earlier in the year dipped off, but
I'll tell you right now.
Yeah,
I'll tell you right now.
He's been out.
So here are the last. We'll do the last. I mean, he hasn't had a usage rate over 23% since November 22nd.
Okay.
So 18, 19, 23, 23, 19, 23, 16, 24.8. So like he's getting it done with like 20. I'm not saying 21% usage is even bad. Like that's solid.
No, that's pretty good.
22 rounding up. Like That's solid.
The elite guys usually are like 28, 26, something in that range. So
I was just like, based on production and like that he's the point guard, I'm like just thinking it would be naturally higher, but DeRozan and Vucevic still both 29 and 24. He's fine. He's been a 1.05 fantasy point per minute producer. Um, you know, they beat Milwaukee outright last time. Could that happen again? I guess, but 11 and a half point spread in that game. I think obviously if Lowry's rolled out, like, you save over $2,000 going down to Richardson, or you save like almost $2,000 going down to Killian Hayes in the best paced against the best paced team in the biggest game total as well. So Kobe White's fine if that's where you land. I just prefer other guys.
Okay. Let's go on over to shooting guard here. Top tier, you have Donnie Mitch at $9,500. You have Anthony Edwards, who's probably not going to play or trending not towards playing. I think we saw, right? Or is he going to be in or not today?
I mean, he re-aggravated the same hip, so like
seems like he's probably trending towards not playing.
Yeah.
Mitchell's there at 95. The cover of this morning's show, Desmond Bane's 87. DeJounte, Paul George. What are we thinking here?
It's Desmond Bane for me in this tier for sure. Excuse me. Obviously he had the bad game against the Timberwolves, which everyone has seemingly had. There's been like everyone's gonna have, every once in a while, squirrel finds a nut, but they were the number one defense. We pointed you away from that spot, and he flopped. But we've seen a super consistent floor ceiling combination at Desmond Bane prior to that. 27 plus games in the 3 games prior, 45 plus DK points in the 4 games prior. And without Marcus Smart this year, 1.3 fantasy points per minute, 31% usage. Dallas, 23rd in defensive rating, 8th in pace. Again, one of like 5 teams this year, bottom 10 in defense and top 10 in pace. Like, you love to see that and love to target guys against. And I get why, I guess, like, the algorithm just moves Desmond Bane's price from 92 to 87, but like, sign me up for the algorithm giving us $500 cheaper Desmond Bane in the spot that he's in. So shout out to that algorithm. Mark Williams ruled out Jalen Suggs game time decision.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, we knew the other one. Embiid also a game time decision here. So
that is very interesting to me, because
we'll know at least 7 p.m. start.
Yeah, we will know.
They set him out. It's all systems go on Tyrese Maxey against Washington.
Yeah, and then they probably go back to like this Markieff Morris starting lineup where it's like, can we just stop and just play Paul Reed? Like, just play Paul Reed. Just because he made comments to Anthony Davis, like, you're punishing him. Like,
yeah, but that'll be pretty interesting to see where all the ownership flips to if all of a sudden you get Maxey in that kind of spot. Mid-tier range at shooting guard. Anybody popping off to you here?
Mid-tier range. I mean, Rozier's going to play 40 minutes in a competitive game. We know Miami isn't as good as they've been defensively. So if you want to get to Rozier, same thing with Keita, as I mentioned. Ingram is a good price. Terrible spot. I mean, for what it's worth, Jordan Clarkson, if you ever want to talk about an ultimate green light, if John Collins is out, Jordan Clarkson could take 30 shots in a competitive game tonight. Yep. Obviously, you're like, okay, well, how does Utah keep it close? Right here, Jordan Clarkson 7,200. If that game was to at all stay competitive, he would obviously be at the forefront of that. Caleb Martin at 6,400 is really intriguing. Just with the minutes in general, that's pre-Kyle Lowry news. Right. He's just been playing and starting.
Does anybody get like any sort of significant bump with Lowry and Bam off the floor?
Jimmy Butler.
Man. I guess
Butler had it goes from like 1 point high 2s to like 1 point almost 5. So, and that was also with Haywood Highsmith off the floor as well, because they're missing 3. Missing 2 starters, potentially 3. But I mean, Caleb Martin 64 with Kyle Lowry in the lineup has been incredibly effective lately. Was arguably robbed of a conference finals MVP last year. and he's at 1.1 fantasy points per minute with all those 3 guys off the floor. Now, it's like the 95-minute sample, and that's kind of what everyone is. It's all like smaller samples because taking Bam, Highsmith, and Lowry off the floor, it's 3 starters. It's not like a massive sample. But Martin has had a really productive time without those guys, so he would get an even bigger bump if Kyle Lowry were to sit as well.
Yeah. Other guys in that same range, you have D'Anthony Melton at 63, Middleton here at 63, Devin Vassell, Duncan Robinson, like any of those guys along with the Caleb Martin in play for you?
Yeah, I feel like this is like a very contingent based tier. Like, how about D'Anthony Melton if Embiid were to sit? D'Anthony Melton's like always the first guy I plug in that scenario because he's a really good rebounder that obviously bodes to pick up more rebounds if Joel Embiid's off the floor. Chris Middleton, if that game can stay competitive, he just showed us he could play 30 minutes now. I guess with no ill effects coming from it. We've now seen the ramp up 25, 26, 36, or 30 minutes into 3 straight games, and now 25, 31, 38 fantasy points. So if you want to get to Middleton, it's all about your thoughts on how competitive that game can stay.
All right.
Brandon Miller plays monster minutes with everyone with LaMelo Ball out, and now like they can just go to kind of like a smaller lineup at times. And now with Mark Williams out, I mean, 34 fantasy points. You need like kind of a higher ceiling. He's given us almost 40, so the ceiling is there. Duncan Robinson we've seen the absolute best and the absolute worst in the last 2 games. 42 and negative 0.5, which is super. I think the negative 0.5 is more impressive than the 42 fantasy points. So you could definitely play Duncan Robinson. Not playing NAW, even if there's a fire. Even if Anthony Edwards is out. If I lose to a $5,900 NAW tonight, I whatever. Because it's just not like, what is like the upside? I know I shouldn't use that word because we said that was the word the exact word you used.
I said if he goes for 50 and I lose, then he does, and he goes for 50. So
but like even with Anthony Edwards off the floor this year, including that game, 0.77 fantasy points per minute this year. 0.77. So if I lose because of that, so be it. But I'm not playing AEW.
Okay. Tim Hardaway Jr., Trey Murphy here. My mouth kept on wanting to say Troy Murphy. I'm like, I know it's Trey. Say the word. Trey Murphy here at 54. Tim Hardaway at 54. Maybe Oubre gets a bump if Joel Embiid sits out here at 53. Mathurin, we talked about off the bench, had a really big game. Brown was the one that filled in again for Edwards. Like any of these 5K range guys?
I think Troy Murphy, I actually think he played on New Orleans, lefty. Little lefty.
Is that why I'm getting all confused? Like I kept wanting to say Troy Murphy.
I'm pretty sure Troy Murphy, ex Notre Dame great, played in the NBA for a while.
He did for a long time, 10 years.
Yeah.
Never a Pelican though.
Okay. Never.
Golden State Warrior, Indian or Pacer. A cup of coffee at Boston. Don't even remember that one. Ended his career in 2012, 2013.
Yeah. Okay. So wrong about the
He was a 3-point shooter though, so
was a shoot put through
same skill set.
Yes, on Hardaway. Hoarder would be a little more interesting too if Monk were to sit. Murphy, the Pelicans in general are just confusing to me. I'm probably going to pass on them in general. Just with the uncertainty of like people are calling people fat in New Orleans, and there's
Stephen A. Smith saying there's not a chef in New Orleans that isn't looking for Zion.
There's like the rotation's a little weird. I know that game was a blowout, but like Murphy wasn't even playing a lot, but he like started the 4th quarter in a 40-point game with Jose Alvarado in that one. I'm a little about it. The Oubre thing could be interesting if there's no Embiid. They would need obviously an influx of scoring
Sure.
I could get there. Matherin's okay. He should be fine, especially if Neesmith's out. So
Koulibaly.
yeah, Koulibaly played 30 minutes the last time Daniel Gafford was ruled out. It was the Toronto game back in November where they didn't play, or it was 34 minutes in the front end. They didn't play Mike Muscala. That was when everyone thought they were going to start Mike Muscala game,
Yeah.
and then they didn't, and he DMP'd.
Yeah,
Straight
he got
DMP.
zero. Yeah, got zero.
And then started the next game. Koulibaly played 34 and 33 minutes in those games. And I think it's because, one, they just naturally don't have a backup center if they don't want to play Mike Muscala, and they're just like comfortable playing smaller.
Yeah, they're throwing Gallinari out there at the
front. Yeah. I mean, and if like Embiid didn't play, you could probably get away with that, especially if they decide like, oh, we could just use Morris as the starting 5, and then Paul Reed off the bench, who is 6'10". It's not like he's a 7-footer. So Koulibaly definitely stands to benefit from Daniel Gafford being out. I like that play quite a bit, 4,800 on this evening.
Any other value shooting guards?
No.
All right. Small forward buckets here. It's $8,900. Where does he rank for you tonight if Lowry gets ruled out? No Bam. Like, is he above Bane for you? Do you like him? Like, where does Butler rank for you?
He would definitely be amongst one of the best per dollar spends. The one thing I'll say is we know what we never know if we're going to get score first Jimmy or pass first Jimmy, or I'm going to do everything I can tonight, Jimmy. Like, he wears a lot of different hats. We've seen, just look at the last few games as an example. Like, 12-point loss, 15 shots, 16 points. 3 games ago against Indiana, or back-to-back Indiana games, shoots a whole bunch, gets to the free throw line 29 times in 2 games, 30 bombs in both. Like,
did have a big game against Charlotte already this year.
Did have a big game against Charlotte, and it wouldn't surprise me if he had another big game against Charlotte. It's obviously not as big of a pace-up spot as it's been in years past, just given what Charlotte has played. Like, they're 19th in pace over their last 10 games. So that's just kind of bottom of the barrel when it comes to like at least what we're grown accustomed to seeing LaMelo push the tempo at with this team. He would probably be a little ahead of Bane. I definitely feel better about the Bane shot attempts. But Jimmy is one of those dudes that can just say, you know what, I'm just gonna do everything. And he might even play like backup point guard minutes. He might just be
I'm saying, like he could just run the offense here tonight. So you have him here. You have Scotty Barnes, who blew up the slate, as we talked about. Somebody against Charlotte in that game was going to go off. It was either or Siakam or Barnes. It was Barnes, 30-point triple-double. He's got the Knicks this go-around, not as nearly as of a good matchup. DeRozan, Kawhi Leonard at small forward, power forward, now at 81. What about the rest of this 8K range for you?
DeRozan is definitely interesting. I coined him Point DeRozan in the playbook today. The assists have been quite solid, and we've even gotten pretty poor shooting nights out of him the last 2 nights. Last 2 games, 49, 42 fantasy points in those games. So if we get 44% on the year shooter DeMar DeRozan in those 2 games, we probably get 50 bombs in both. So if you think the game can stay competitive, you definitely get to DeRozan. I lean more towards tournaments for him because he doesn't play the fourth quarter. That's going to hurt your cash game lineups for sure. Kawhi definitely in play. I would probably like Malcolm Brogdon to play in that game more, just given how not competitive Portland can be without Brogdon. But the minutes for Kawhi are definitely the best thing about him this year, because playing back-to-backs is first, but like the minutes over the last 6 games for Kawhi, 38, 38, 39, 35, 37, 39. I mean, that's amazing. So it's good to see him healthy and back and coming off 41 actual against Utah. Ain't too shabby either. So I'm definitely interested in Kawhi at 81. And haven't seen him multi-position eligible in a while. So that's also good to see.
Where do you find yourself on MPJ here tonight? Coming off 20 actual points, the rebounding continues to be really good. Obviously, the scoring is inconsistent, but pace up spot for Denver here with a 240 total. Joker can't do everything. Do you think MPJ is in a good spot here today?
DeAndre Hunter listed out.
Yeah, there goes that domino. We'll see who moves into the starting lineup for him today.
I would say my assumption would they maybe just plug Bogdanovich, but
True. Play Bay at the four.
Yeah, and then maybe one of the Matthews would probably be my guess, but Patty Mills is lurking as well. I'm not against Michael Porter. I've pretty much settled into I like Michael Porter when Jokic is playing, and I don't like it when he's not because Jokic just makes things easy for everybody else. And now we've seen multiple threes out of Michael Porter in back-to-back games, getting open looks off of Jokic being the hub. So I like Porter. I'm kind of on the fence about like where I stand, like court play, tournaments, cash. Like you could probably play. I mean, it's 242 total, massive pace up spot. So if you land on Michael Porter,
no DeAndre Hunter on the floor necessarily to defend him. So you do have Jalen Williams written up. Talk to us about the Thunder forward here.
Yeah, I mean, another situation where if you can't get to SGA because it's like almost $11,000. Jalen Williams has been the number 2 option lately, and you talked about this on the show yesterday, where it's like seemingly they go through stretches where it's Chet or it's Jalen or random Isaiah Joe games off the bench or random Lou Dort game, but Jalen Williams has been super, super good, and Utah doesn't have any rim protection. I mean, no Walker Kessler. All Oklahoma City does, and this is why, like, the more I think about OKC, the more I want to play SGA, and I just pray that this game stays competitive, is because all OKC does is attack the rim. They just go to the rim. SGA attacks the rim, kicks to Jalen, who attacks the rim and kicks to Chet, who attacks the rim, and it's just like a continuous cycle. And we've seen that work time and time again for Jalen Williams lately. 28, 23, 21 actual in 3 of the last 4, 39 plus fantasy points in those games. 6,500, another guy who has gained eligibility as the season has worn on because he was only power forward earlier in the year, and now we're getting the small forward bump too, and a 25% usage rate and over a fantasy point per minute without Lou Dort. Utah 25th in defensive rating. Sign me up for some J-dubs at 6,500. If you don't think that game can stay close, it's probably a situation you might just shy away from. But we've seen a lot of teams that should not stay competitive. So who knows anymore? If that game stays competitive, it wouldn't be surprised.
Yep. Where else are we going as we move our way down the small forward spot?
We talked about Gordon Hayward on the pod. I didn't write him up today, but he'll be in the player pool. He's been super efficient, super effective offensively lately. The minutes are back to being where they were earlier in the year, 36, 44, 26, 38 fantasy points. Could definitely get to some Hayward. We already talked about Caleb Martin. We already talked about Chris Middleton. Jaime. So I'm a little on the fence about Jaquez here. The minutes are great. Can't hit in the minutes. He's been a fantastic rookie in general. There hasn't been like the price is definitely down. There hasn't really been a ceiling. 34 fantasy points has been his ceiling, which I'm not saying is the worst at 5,800, but we could probably scroll through the positions for $5,800 and find guys with higher ceilings at 58.
Okay.
I think he is safe because it is Charlotte. It's a good spot defensively. Like even if Charlotte is playing slower, they still suck defensively. That hasn't gotten any better. I don't love the price for what the ceiling has been. Now, could it be higher with Kyle Lowry out of the lineup? Possibly, because we could see lineups where we see Jimmy as the point guard and they're just playing massive lineups. But even at this price, like, what if Brunson and Quickly don't play?
Right.
And then we have RJ Barrett, who we already know gets a slight tick up with no Mitchell Robinson in terms of rebounds, who's coming off back-to-back really good scoring games and was doing this pre-migraine. And, like I would probably rather play Barrett at the same price. The matchup for Jaquez is better, but I would probably play Barrett in that instance.
What are we doing with Dante Exum?
Sending him back to the 2014 NBA draft where he belongs. I mean, like he's obviously been good. 23 actual is a little bit of an outlier. I mean, he scored 27 fantasy points the game before scoring 5.
Mm-hmm.
That feels more realistic than it does the 23 actual. 9 of 15 is super efficient. It's not like Memphis is good. Dante Exum's an annoying play today. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm a little indifferent about it because I think the minutes will obviously be somewhere between 26 to 33, like we've seen the last 2 games. Maybe he sees the 33 minutes they did in Portland. What if he's not as efficient, right? What if he's 6 for 15 and Seth Curry is the guy coming off the bench and hits those shots? So I love the eligibility. The matchup is good. 5,700 is a little uncomfortable for me.
All right, what's your next play then?
Next play is probably his teammate, Derrick Jones Jr. I feel more comfortable about what Derrick Jones has brought to the table lately on a more consistent basis. He shot 1 of 7 from 3 in a game he played 40 minutes, and he's still over the last 4 games shooting 43% from 3. He's still shooting 40% from 3 this year. They're just kind of banged up, and specifically in their front court where there's no Grant Williams, there's no Maxi Kleba. They just kind of are going to this small ball space the floor. No Josh Green. They're just going to this small ball space the floor lineup with Derrick Jones at the 4, crash the board, space for Luka, let Luka operate, be on the wing and ready to shoot. And that's kind of what Derrick Jones has been. And we even got the minute ceiling last game, which you love to see. And you said it. I think you were quoted as saying regular shots he made last night. Even when he didn't make threes, he still had 14 and 8 off in 39 minutes. So I really like Derrick Jones at 5,300. I've been getting to him quite a bit. Small forward, power forward, like the eligibility there.
All right, what's your value small forwards on this slate? We talked about Koulibaly already today. Anybody else off the board for you down here?
Toumani Camara is interesting. Josh Hart is a little bit interesting if guys are ruled out for the Knicks. And by a little bit, I think I would have some pretty good interest in.
Yeah, if Quickly and Brunson are out, that would be probably one of my favorite values, honestly.
Yeah, and I think like we might even see like Miles McBride start, which could just be like a more of like filler than anything. Aaron Nesmith on track to play.
Yeah,
per Rick Carlisle. So,
he's fine.
Yeah,
I think what's weird about that is like Toppin will start, but Nesmith will close. Right,
yeah.
so it's like
they
figure out which way you want to go with that. They both end up playing around the same amount of minutes.
Yep. Because they love the Nesmith defense. He's gonna probably guard anytime he's on the floor. He's probably guarding Cade Cunningham. Like he'll probably just be on Cade. That's my assumption. I don't think there's anything else down here. I guess like the question is, what does OKC do? I would assume because we've seen it before, they just start Case and Wallace and they still bring Isaiah Joe off the bench. But Isaiah Joe obviously is a guy that
could see more minutes.
Yeah, I mean, and he makes a lot of shots. I mean, he's not shooting the 50.
Let's see. What else do they have for depth here? So they still have Kenrich.
Wiggins is the guy who played the minutes last game. Wiggins played 22 minutes.
Okay.
My assumption is Case and Wallace starts.
Okay.
And then Isaiah Joe is their 6th man, which he's been anyway, but gets a bump. If he's averaging 20 minutes in the year. He plays 25, 26. 3
men we just mentioned are in the DraftKings analysis here. Could see Isaiah Joe, Case and Wallace, and Aaron Wiggins. So.
Yeah. If I'm ranking those guys, Joe Wallace Wiggins, probably.
Yeah, obviously the scoring upside for Joe is nice there. So power forward position: Giannis, Towns, Wemby, Randall. Like, what are we doing when it comes to spending up at power forward today?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get to Giannis and you think he plays the minutes that he's played lately, the last time we saw them in a blowout scenario, he played 28 minutes. So obviously, they're in competitive games. He's playing big minutes. In non-competitive games that aren't the in-season tournament, because he played 34 in that 24-point win in the in-season tournament. Um, there he's gonna 40-minute ceiling, 28-minute floor, can fill it up. He's not like my priority amongst these spend ups, but if you end up on Giannis, by all means. You and I had a good debate about the Towns versus Gobert thing on the podcast this morning, where like I'm good getting to Karl Anthony Towns, but Rudy Gobert's $1,200 cheaper and has been better in terms of fantasy production. Now Towns is better from a per minute basis, but if you want to get to Towns, by all means, almost 1.5 fantasy points per minute
So
without
we had the
Anthony
big
Edwards.
debate this morning. Towns versus Gobert today. So
Yep. And then Wemby is what he is. Like he is a tournament play that has an insane ceiling in any spot because the Bulls play. This is essentially the exact spot that he just had. The Bulls were dead last in pace. Houston's 29th. Chicago's slightly worse defensively. He started at center, went 20-24-4, and had a steal. Like
on an 8 of 20 shooting night.
On an 8 of 20 shooting. Like there's just a insane ceiling. It's what it is. You can play him in tournaments. You don't look his way at all in cash games. You don't even consider it. But if San Antonio on the road, another situation, Houston's been really good at home. If they keep it close, Wemby has a 60-point, 70-point, who knows point ceiling.
All right. Our way down into the mid-tier range here. Banchero at 8,400 against Cleveland had that monster game against Cleveland. No Evan Mobley. Siakam, Kuzma, Triple J at $7,800 in a competitive game. Where are we going in the mid-tier?
I don't know. Like you can play any of these guys. Even Julius Randle in that mix too. No Mitchell Robinson. We could see Randle play some small ball center as well. I wouldn't mind that, especially if there's no Brunson. Julius Randle could be an elite mid-tier play. Siakam's fine. 8,300. The price gone up, even though he's only averaging 39 fantasy points over his last 5. Kuzma becomes much more appealing if there's no Embiid, because you possibly think that Washington could keep this game more competitive, and you see Kuzma play a bunch of minutes. DeRozan we mentioned, Kawhi we mentioned. No thanks on Zion. And Triple J, good luck.
Sure.
If you play him, good luck. It's tournaments only. If you play him in cash, you deserve everything that you just signed.
It comes your way. Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll go down below then. 5K, 6K range. Where were you heading for some value today?
Jalen Williams, obviously mentioned. I do think Saddiq Bey does become a little more interesting. The shot attempts and the minutes last game were fantastic. Nothing went in at all. I mean, he didn't make any shots, but you have to assume no DeAndre Hunter. Nothing's going to change on that front. They don't have DeAndre Hunter. They also don't have Jalen Johnson. Those are they're like number 1 and number 2 guys that Saddiq Bey is competing with 4 minutes and 4 shots in the front court. They didn't go double big last game. And I don't think they can go Ngannou on Aaron Gordon in this game either. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But Saddiq is going to play a lot of minutes if that game can stay competitive. Jabari Smith is the chalk power forward of the day. I'm fine with it. He had a really bad game against San Antonio the first time around, but like 16 shots were great, almost a double-double in that game. And it's a massive pace-up spot for Houston. Massively good spot in terms of defensive matchup. So if you want to play Jabari Smith as the chalk, you can. I haven't found myself getting there, but
Sure.
if that's where you find your lineups taking you, Godspeed.
Andrew wants to know our thoughts on Nas Reed here at 5,500.
I mean, Jordan meme.
It's the
I
most
mean,
money. It's the most money you would be spending on him all season long, but he is also on a nice little run here.
he's on a heater. He's amazing. Tournaments, because there's a super low floor. 24 to 25 minutes is probably a reasonable expectation for Nas Reed, and we've seen him go for 30 in that scenario, so I'm not against it.
Sorry, I was just getting distracted by the Ohtani contract news. He's deferring $68 million of the $70 million each year. So he's basically getting paid $2 million a year for the next 10 years on deferred payments. So the Dodgers are getting him for free. Yeah. Again, the tournament play for Nas is fine. Obviously, Obi Toppin takes a little bit of a hit. Do you go back to Kevin Love well here, or what do you do?
I am shocked by that number. Is shocking. You can. I mean, look at they just get random Kevin Love minutes. I mean, he has played 24 times this year. 2 times were the first 2 games of the year, and then hadn't done it until he started against Milwaukee, and then he hadn't done Cleveland. Maybe we should have seen the revenge coming. Maybe we should have seen him going 5 or 4 for 8 from 3 and having 14 and 12 coming, but he's probably going to be on the short end of the split today, and
Sure.
Orlando Robinson's probably going to have a monster game, and we're going to be like, oh, right, that probably would have happened last game if Kevin Love didn't just catch fire from 3 in the fourth quarter. So,
Right.
I'm
Bobby Porter's Chicago game on the way. Averaging 30 fantasy points against him in 2 games this season, and he's not 6K anymore. He's 5,200.
Yeah, I mean, so it was largely due to the one big game he had earlier in the year. He had a monster double, and then the second game wasn't as good. I'm not like
fantasy points at 52 is a lot better than at 6K.
Sure, that is for sure. I'm not against it. I'm a little indifferent about it. He doesn't play like he's one of those weird guys where like he doesn't get extended in blowouts. He just plays like his 22 to 26 minutes depending on the night.
Right.
So like he's not impacted at all by blowout, and he could go for 30 here, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Sure. Fontecchio, DFS, any of these other guys in this 5K, 4K swing? Georges Niang at 45. Batum, if there's no Embiid, maybe at 44. Like anybody here?
Yeah, I guess the Batum Morris, because Morris is small forward, power forward, $3,700. Covington, 4,200. We saw Covington against the Celtics have that monster game when Embiid sat. Like, all these guys are super darty tournament plays. I think Batum would actually probably be last for me amongst Covington, Morris, Batum, because Nick Batum isn't going to go out there and suddenly take 15 shots because Joel Embiid's out. So I would take the discount on Covington, or I would take the discount on Morris if Embiid was out.
All right, center spot. Joker's 11-9, Embiid 11-7, questionable. Giannis is eligible. Sabonis is at 9,700, which I don't feel like we've talked much of anything on Sacramento, Brooklyn here today. Talk Town, Şengün. What are we doing with the center position at the top tier?
Jokic is elite if you get there. Embiid is elite if he plays. No problem getting to either guy. Embiid has been the better of the two lately from a fantasy perspective. If you want to play either of them.
Are we closing in on the one day Embiid is actually more expensive than Nikola Jokic?
Could be. I mean, you have to scroll to see 50 fantasy point mark on Embiid's ledger.
Mm-hmm.
Jokic has done it twice in 4 games, which isn't. This is not a knock on Jokic at all. He's been the best player in the NBA for a couple of years.
He shot attempts for a while. 9 of 26, 9 of 32.
Insane. And who's to say it slows down in a pace of spot against Atlanta? It's not like that's suddenly a spot he's like, oh, can't shoot
if he
here.
Like 18 for 32 tonight, he's gonna have 100 fantasy.
100 fantasy points, right? So, which is kind of what Embiid does every night, right? Like he when you look at the free throw attempts and the shot attempts, like he's just taking 30 shots a night. So if you end up on either of those guys, great. Sabonis, it's a good price. I don't mind getting to the Kings, but I just have found myself going elsewhere.
We usually talk late night hammer games and 10 p.m. start 2 hours after the next one. I know there's a 10:30 and we just haven't talked really any Brooklyn Sacramento today. So
yeah, it's a good game. Like again, it's a good game. 236. You can if you want to get there. I kind of the Brooklyn side is hard because they're healthy-ish, right?
Yeah.
They have 7 guys that could play 30 minutes, but if one of them's not making shots, if Cam Thomas isn't making shots, he's not in the rotation. If Finney Smith is 51, he has 14 fantasy point floor. Royce O'Neal is 53. He has a 15 fantasy point floor. Bridges is 8,500. That's good. I don't know. This game is a tough sell. I would say if Monk were to sit, Horter becomes my favorite play from that game, probably.
Sure. Moving our way down again, we talked a lot of Rudy Gobert. Is he cracking a lineup for you tonight, or are you just going value center?
That's probably the question of the day, right? 2 elite spend ups, 3 values that everyone's getting to. And once again, the field, it's kind of just I understand you've been good, Rudy, but we're not going to play you. The fantasy production doesn't fluctuate depending on Anthony Edwards being in the lineup or not. He's just a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy either way, but we've just gotten ceiling performance after ceiling performance lately out of Gobert for kind of still a depressed price based on what we're getting. So
that's what I'm saying.
If you want to play Gobert, you're basically making a decision. You're not.
You can double play them on DraftKings. I don't know what the eligibility is on FanDuel. I'm sure Hartenstein's probably power forward center eligible or something like that. But at least you can play one of the value centers on DraftKings if you needed to go there.
Well, what I was going to say is that means you're also not playing Embiid or Jokic. Sure. Because you're probably, if you're playing Embiid or Jokic, you're most likely playing one of those value centers.
Correct.
So then you're not, and that's what I think the field is doing because Rudy Gobert is under 1% projected. Nobody, once again, is playing Rudy Gobert. And you just said it yesterday. We've talked about it every slate. He continues to dominate every slate, and I don't click his name.
I never find a way to find him in my lineup, but the man has been unbelievable for 2 weeks now. So, again, I have no problem going there. So Marvin Bagley's out and Jalen Duran is out. So we're going to get a starting center lineup for Detroit here tonight. That could be James Wiseman. Could be Isaiah Stewart, right? We'll see. Miles Turner, $7,300 here. Do you go the Indiana side of it, or do you just wait and see what play comes out of Detroit?
I really like the Miles Turner side. I think that is a very interesting spot. He has 50 plus. He's gone for 50 plus against Detroit. He just went for 50 plus in the semifinal of the in-season tournament when he stays out of foul trouble because he's a good two-way player. I don't know what to do about Detroit front court because Isaiah Stewart is so unappealing these days. Multiple less than 20 fantasy point games lately, and I understand that, but just so uninspiring to play Isaiah Stewart. His 30 fantasy point game of late had 5 assists involved, and he's averaging 1 assist per game. So
there's been no shot attempts here, but if he starts at center, there's got to be a minute ceiling for him here.
My assumption is he starts for what it's worth. They are playing Wiseman a little more, but
there's been 16 minutes without a shot attempt. He had two free throws, I guess, so 4 free throw attempts. Wiseman's not even cheap. He's $5,200, so I don't think I'm playing that. So
you just play the other guys. Wiseman is almost Stewart's 57 and Wiseman's 52. Neither of them are cheap. When you have, and I think that's the problem. You have 3 guys who are the 3. You just look at our updated ownership at fantasyline.com. 3 of the 4 now included min salary Mike Muscala. He's been added to the fray. 4 of the 5 names in terms of ownership are centers under 5K.
We had a lot of questions on Hartenstein in the chat. Andrew mentioned Hartenstein. Albert mentioned Hartenstein. We've obviously talked about him on the show extensively here. Are you going Nick Richards, Yurt7, or Hartenstein at center tonight?
Oh, I mean, this is going to be like a make or break question for the day because you just don't want to pick the wrong one of the 3. I'll say this. I think Hartenstein has the best minutes ceiling. I think his potential for minutes is greater than everyone. Just Thibodeau is the coach.
Brunson in, by the way, so we are getting news here right now.
Okay, so we probably should get the quickly news, hopefully, to follow. Hartenstein, I think, has the best minutes ceiling. He also has averaged the fewest fantasy points per minute of the 3, Yurt7, Nick Richards, and Hartenstein himself. Nick Richards, I think, has the highest ceiling in terms of fantasy production. That's based on 1.09 fantasy points per minute is the best of the 3. He's given us at least 20 DK points in all 5 games he's played 20 minutes or more in, including the last 2. Obviously, he's played 26 and 28 minutes. And Yurt7 has approached 30 minutes recently. There is no Walker Kessler. They have been giving first-round pick Taylor Hendricks some run, off a lot more run lately, as much as 25 minutes against Dallas 2 games ago in a big blowout loss, which is where I'm slightly hesitant with Yurt7 because he DMP'd in that game.
Yep.
He DMP'd the last game. There's no guarantee Yurt7 were to close in a blowout with Taylor Hendricks playing the minutes that he's played lately. So
Nick Richards was the center I wanted to play when we talked about it this morning.
Same.
Like that was my guy. So I'm definitely more in on Nick Richards tonight than like Hartenstein and the other crew. But you're not wrong. I think it's picking the right 1 or 2 tonight could be the make or break spot. Any other centers for you here?
If Muscala starts,
no,
and there's no Embiid at 3K,
I don't know. I probably not.
If there's no Embiid,
I don't really like Muscala.
We don't have to like him. He just needs to sneeze and he can get to 15 fantasy points. If he gives us I don't think I would go there.
Is he a power forward on FanDuel at least?
He is a center only.
Powers is watching. Center only. If he was if he's like power forward center, maybe on FanDuel. I don't know. At least we'll know if he's starting.
We will.
7:00 start. I guess. I don't like it.
I don't either.
He's the only 3K play on the slate. So
would you play Gallinari?
I don't think I play any of them.
4K. Gallinari's played 19, 17, 21 minutes in the last 3 games.
I don't think I get to either player.
Okay.
I think I'm more likely to go back to the Gary Trentwell.
At least we know Gary Trent will shoot.
It's true. All right, let's build a lineup. I'm going to plug in our guy here. My guy, at least.
I think I'm on the Nick Richards side of this as well.
Are we doubling up?
I mean, I guess it depends. Who is your top spend? Mine's Luka.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So we double up. Play Hartenstein.
Yeah.
Gives us 58 a play. Can we get Bane in this spot here? Bane knocks us down to 5K. It's a little tough.
Yeah, it's brutal.
Richardson. I mean, Richardson doesn't play no matter what, but if it's just better if Lowry's out.
Yeah.
I don't think we
Derek Jones is 53. It's not like value, but Derek Jones.
Koulibaly, I guess, at 48.
Koulibaly.
Let's go power forward or forward 52.50. I guess we could go Neesmith if he's going to play.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a fine play. He'll be on the floor because Cade's on the floor.
And the minutes are kind of just there, so I think this is a 55 forward play. Go Naz Reid, Tim Hardaway Jr., Derek Jones.
Put Bane. You could also put Bane in the. You can get Killian Hayes at 55 if you move Bane and Richardson. Bane to forward, Richardson to.
Do you like Hayes over Hardaway or Jones?
Derek Jones works actually 53. Pair him with Luka. That's a good correlation.
All right. So just an example lineup for everybody. Getting Luka Doncic in there. Doncic, Bane, Koulibaly, Neesmith, Richardson, Jones, and Hartenstein. Playbook is out. Player pool will be published momentarily, I'm sure. Is Michael Porter Jr. any good? Mark, we don't mind him tonight. He's again high, up-paced game, high game total. Can certainly get to MPJ tonight if you wanted to there. Get us in the Discord. Find us on Twitter if you have any questions. Again, Playbook's out. We'll be there till roster lock at 7 o'clock. Till then, we'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Good luck tonight.